Given the very promising way a huge number of cases of Omicron, for most people just a common cold, let's be honest, has not resulted in increased mortality, you would have thought we would have had a very different narrative coming from the doomsday duo Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance at today's dreaded Downing Street press conference. Chance would be a fine thing. Instead, you had Whitty once again behind his slides, admitting there is no evidence of any surge in deaths, while at the same time trying to keep the population terrified of contracting the cron.
That this is a mild disease as opposed to less likely to be hospitalised, I think is easily demonstrated to be incorrect based on these data. One thing which we have seen, and which is obviously extremely good news compared to where we were with previous waves, is that the mortality rate does not appear to have risen. The numbers have been artificially low over the last 2 or 3 days because it's a long weekend, and will be artificially high tomorrow. But we are not seeing the surge in mortality that we saw in previous waves. But there will be people, particularly people who are vulnerable for other reasons, because of age or medical conditions, who will sadly die of this.
How can anyone take his scaremongering seriously anymore? Despite the best efforts of the lockdown lobbyists at the BBC, Boris did not give in and announce any more restrictions. So I guess we're meant to be happy that Plan BS is continuing, even though we were told these measures would not go on for a single moment longer than necessary. That said, at least Boris is prepared to stand up to his scaremongering scientific advisors, unlike Nicola Sturgeon or Mark Drakeford. Here's the truth. All of the people calling for further lockdown measures were wrong. And Boris was right to finally start talking loudly this evening about the huge economic, social and health destruction caused by lockdowns. Something that has been missing in these press conferences for far too long.
It's the effect on people's lives and livelihoods of lockdowns, which are painful, which take away people's life chances, and which do a great deal of social damage to people's mental health, as well as damage to the economy. So it's a difficult balance to strike.
Shame on the Labour Party for lobbying for further restrictions pre-Christmas to score cheap political points.
The thing that our experience in the pandemic tells us is that action sooner rather than later means that the strength of the restrictions and the impact on people's lives, livelihoods and liberties is lowered. So action sooner rather than later would be better rather than worse.
Let's just remember that. Labour wanted us in lockdown before Christmas. They were wrong. But now Boris and the government must go further to restore our freedoms and put us on a genuine path to learning to live with COVID. The CDC in the USA and the ultra-cautious French administration, which let's not forget has banned eating and drinking on trains, have both reduced the COVID isolation period to 5 days. But England is stubbornly keeping it at 7 days, assuming you have tested negative on a lateral flow test for 2 days in a row. We need to immediately reduce the isolation period to 5 days to ensure society doesn't grind to a halt. That's what the Federation of Small Businesses called for today too. Now this is interesting. The CDC said the virus is more infectious in the 2 days before and 3 days after symptoms appear, meaning 5 days locked up at home is more than enough. Right now, with at least 1 million Brits in self-isolation, there is the risk of school closures, further rail cancellations and business shutdowns because of a lack of staff. That is not learning to live with COVID, and it will be disastrous for the economy.